Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, let me ask you something. What happens when an entire Marine regiment is pinned down, trapped on black volcanic sand, surrounded by hidden enemy guns, and there's nowhere left to advance or retreat? On February 19th, 1945, that question became terrifyingly real on the island of Iwo Jima. The Marines had landed under heavy fire. The beach offered no cover. Japanese artillery was perfectly concealed inside bunkers, caves, and tunnels carved deep into the rock. Every step forward cost lives. Entire companies were stalled, pinned in place by machine gun fire they couldn't see and couldn't silence. Then from the sky came help, not from a massive bombing raid, not from battleships offshore, but from a single Marine pilot flying so low that infantrymen could see his aircraft's markings, and so close that one mistake would have killed the very men he was trying to save. His name was William A. Leonard Jr., a Marine Corps aviator who would repeatedly dive into the heart of Japanese fire to strike targets only yards from American positions. His missions were so dangerous that survival was never guaranteed. Yet without those flights, Marine regimental lines on Iwo Jima may have collapsed entirely. This is the true story, not of a famous general or a headline hero, but of a combat pilot whose precision, courage, and refusal to pull away helped save thousands of Marines on one of the bloodiest battlefields of World War II. To understand why air support on Iwo Jima became a matter of survival, we need to understand the battlefield itself. Iwo Jima was not meant to be defended like a normal island. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, the Japanese commander, abandoned the traditional strategy of stopping the enemy at the beach. Instead, he transformed the island into a fortress underground. More than 11 miles of tunnels connected bunkers, artillery positions, and command posts. Heavy guns were hidden inside volcanic rock. Machine gun nests were invisible until they opened fire. Every position was designed to overlap with another, creating killing zones that trapped advancing Marines. By the third day of the invasion, several Marine regiments were locked in place. Tanks were being destroyed by hidden anti-tank guns. Infantry units were pinned down by fire coming from positions they could not reach with grenades or flamethrowers. Naval gunfire helped, but only to a point. Battleships could not see individual bunkers close to Marine lines. Bombers were too high and too imprecise. What the Marines needed was close air support, aircraft flying dangerously low, striking targets only yards away from friendly troops. That kind of mission required pilots willing to risk not just enemy fire, but the possibility of killing their own men. And that is where Marine aviators like William A. Leonard Jr. came in. Close air support on Iwo Jima was unlike anything pilots had experienced before. Leonard flew repeated missions over the island, often under cloud cover and thick smoke that reduced visibility to almost nothing. Pilots relied on hand signals, colored smoke, and forward air controllers embedded with Marine units on the ground. Targets were sometimes less than 100 yards from American positions. Leonard and other Marine pilots had to identify enemy bunkers that were deliberately camouflaged to look like natural rock formations. A single mistake, hitting the wrong ridge or misjudging distance, would have resulted in friendly casualties. Despite this, Leonard continued to fly low-level attack runs, drawing intense fire from Japanese anti-aircraft guns, rifles, and machine guns. Aircraft returned to carriers and airfields riddled with holes, some barely holding together. After-action reports describe air support missions that halted Japanese counterattacks at critical moments, allowing Marine regiments to regroup, advance, and hold their lines. This was not dramatic dogfighting. It was slow, methodical, terrifying work, and it made the difference between survival and annihilation for Marines trapped on the ground. One of the most dangerous aspects of Leonard's missions was attacking fortified positions that had already survived naval bombardment. Japanese bunkers on Iwo Jima were reinforced with steel, concrete, and volcanic rock. Some had survived direct hits from battleship shells. To destroy them, pilots had to place bombs and rockets with extreme precision. Leonard flew repeated attack passes, often descending below ridge lines to strike gun positions that were pouring fire into Marine formations. Japanese gunners quickly learned to target aircraft flying low, and casualties among pilots mounted. Despite this, Leonard returned again and again. In several documented engagements, airstrikes coordinated with ground advances neutralized enemy positions that had completely halted Marine regiments. Once those positions were destroyed, Marines could finally move forward. Historians later concluded that without sustained close air support, the battle would have lasted even longer, with significantly higher American casualties. Leonard's contribution was not a single dramatic moment, but a series of relentless, disciplined missions that slowly broke the backbone of Japanese resistance. Flying over Iwo Jima was not just dangerous, it was psychologically exhausting. Pilots knew that every flight carried the possibility of not returning. Aircraft losses were constant. Many pilots saw friends shot down in flames or forced to ditch at sea. Leonard himself flew under conditions that today would be considered extreme. Aircraft instrumentation was basic. Navigation relied heavily on visual reference. Medical evacuation was limited. Survival depended on skill, experience, and a measure of luck. Yet pilots continued to fly because they could see the effect of their missions. They could see Marine units advancing after airstrikes. They could see enemy fire slacken. They could hear the urgency in radio calls from ground forces asking for immediate help. These were not abstract missions. They were personal. The men on the ground depended on the men in the air, and both knew it. After Iwo Jima was secured, military analysts reviewed the battle in detail. The conclusion was clear. Close air support had been essential. Marine Corps and Navy reports emphasized the role of low-altitude attack aircraft in neutralizing enemy strongpoints and preventing regimental collapses during critical phases of the battle. While no single pilot was credited with saving an entire regiment in isolation, pilots like William A. Leonard Jr. played a decisive role in preventing disaster at multiple points. This distinction matters. History is often distorted by exaggeration, but the truth here is powerful enough on its own. Leonard's actions, repeated, disciplined, and extraordinarily dangerous, helped keep Marine regiments intact under conditions that could have otherwise led to catastrophic losses. That is not legend. That is documented military history. When we talk about heroes of Iwo Jima, we often picture infantrymen raising a flag or charging a hill. Those images matter, but victory at Iwo Jima was not achieved by ground forces alone. It was achieved by coordination between Marines fighting inch by inch on volcanic sand and pilots in the sky who flew straight into danger so others could live. William A. Leonard Jr. represents a generation of aviators whose courage rarely makes headlines, but whose impact was undeniable. Their legacy lives on in modern close air support doctrine, where precision, restraint, and coordination remain the standard. Lessons written in blood on islands like Iwo Jima. If you value real history told honestly and without exaggeration, consider subscribing to this channel. There are many more stories like this. Stories of skill, sacrifice, and quiet heroism, waiting to be told. Thank you for watching.